Bonjour. J'ai lu maintenant le grand mise à jour économique au printemps, la première fois. We're so used to a spring budget and a fall economic statement. We have to get used to the new excitement. Elizabeth May, Leader of the Green Party of Canada. I'm so pleased to be joined by Mike Morris, Deputy Leader of the Green Party of Canada and candidate for Kitchener Centre, whenever, to be back here as MP, and also an agricultural economist. You may know, I know my husband, John Kidder, who's also been perusing the economic statement. It will be Mike and I who speak to it. Maintenant, je veux dire, selon le Parti vert du Canada, que nous sommes déçus avec la mise à jour économique du printemps de 2026. Malheureusement, il n'y a rien ici pour les grands besoins du Canada et contre la crise climatique. We are astonished in many ways that this document is as sanguine as it is about the geopolitical turmoil, the price of oil. For instance, the spring economic statement, I'll have to constantly correct myself on that. I hope I'm not the only one. The spring economic statement makes astonishing projections that, we're not going to see the price of oil more than $15 a barrel more than it was for the November budget that we had. We know that the war that was launched by the U.S. and Israel has upended projections for oil prices, it's upended projections for inflation, it's created vast economic uncertainty. But this budget projects a sense that all is good, steady hand at the tiller, no one needs to worry, we can all go to sleep in our beds safe as Canadians. I think we can actually go to sleep in our beds safe as Canadians. I think that's due to the resilience of the Canadian citizenry, due to our faith in each other. But the efforts by the current government to, for instance, take credit for the fact that we went from a $78 billion deficit projection last fall to $65 billion this year, it isn't, in our view, good, prudent financial management by the Government of Canada that has reduced the deficit, but rather the reality that a November budget left very little time to spend all the money projected to be spent. So the budget now, the spring economic statement reduces what we expected as a deficit to $65 billion. Hardly record lows for deficit, not record highs. We look at this, and I'm frankly astonished that we had the grandiose announcement yesterday that we're going to have a new Canadian sovereign wealth fund, and we'd find all the details when we get the spring economic statement. So here's the details. There aren't any. The details are we're now going to have a Build Canada Strong Fund Transition Office. So there will be a Build Canada Strong Transition Office to do consultations and at some point in the undisclosed future tell us how it's going to work, how Canadians can invest in it, how it's going to work. It's clear for now that unlike Norway's sovereign wealth fund, which was based on taxation of oil revenue, this is based on, once again, borrowing money to create a new fund. $25 billion of debt to create a Canada Strong Fund, and we don't know how it's going to work yet. It was very similar. I keep hoping that we're eventually going to see follow through on something that was in the introduction to the November 4th budget. If you missed it, it was at page 19, said one of the great things we can do as a country to build Canada strong will be a northwest, east-south electricity grid to really have a strong electricity grid in Canada. Le réseau électrique, c'est quelque chose de tellement important. Nous avons besoin d'un réseau électrique qui marche. C'est un des éléments des solutions contre la crise du changement climatique. Nous avons c'est un grand besoin. We really need a north-south, east-west electricity grid that works for Canada. So we get a commitment in this document to a discussion paper will be released soon. Now, this is after being teased with this announcement several times by the Prime Minister over the last year, and now we know at some point, an undisclosed future moment, we will get a discussion document. What we don't see in this budget is what's needed for Canadian youth facing almost unprecedented levels of unemployment. What we don't see in this budget is an extension for pharmacare, for really providing the kind of supports Canadians need against the increased costs and the challenges of affordability. But bottom line, if we don't deal with the climate crisis on an urgent basis at a time when scientists are warning us that tipping points are in the near term, potentially with catastrophic permanent shifts in our global climate, and yet this budget has nothing new for renewable energy. Not a penny of new money. There's still the tax credits we got from last year's budget, but solar, wind, renewable energy are ignored, but we're going to get a big nuclear energy strategy. No surprise. I'll turn it now to Mike Morris for his thoughts on today's spring economic statement.
Thank you, Elizabeth. While there's some good news for Canadian athletes in this spring economic update, besides the nice words, it's clear this budget isn't written for regular folks in my community and others across the country. It's certainly not written for parents who are on wait lists for affordable childcare. They will continue to wait. It's certainly not written for those struggling with the rising cost of grocery prices. Besides a rebranded and bumped up GST credit, nothing else for them. It's certainly not for folks with disabilities, seniors, and others living below the poverty line. They're going to continue to wait in the same position. It's not for the young people that are facing sky-high unemployment, as Elizabeth just mentioned. It's also not for those who are having a hard time getting to work because transit might not already serve them or fares might be too high. Instead, it's full of the same stale ideas and exemptions for all the same players. If you're a monopolistic grocery chain, well, you get passed over when it comes to a windfall profit tax the way other countries have already put into place. If you're amongst the super rich or a billionaire in this country who among 60 some odd people have as much wealth as the bottom 6.3 million Canadian families combined, they're not facing any new taxes of any kind on their fortunes. If you're a fossil fuel lobbyist or maybe a conservative floor crosser, well, you're getting new fossil fuel subsidies in this budget, including enhanced oil recovery. If you're one of the biggest corporations in the country, you continue to get bragged about for the lowest taxes in the G7. And if you're a housing developer, you're going to continue to get billions more in loans to use taxpayer money to build homes that most of us can't afford. As Greens, we're going to continue to work and fight for regular folks in communities across the country. Bref, en français aussi, quand on lit sur mise à jour économique de printemps, c'est clair que sauf les athlètes canadiennes, ce budget, ce n'est pas écrit pour monsieur et madame tout le monde, comme les parents qui vont attendre encore pour les garderies abordables. C'est pas écrit pour les gens qui sont dans les situations de pauvreté, comme les gens en situation handicapée. C'est pas pour les gens qui utilisent le transport en commune, qui veulent plus de services et les faire éliminer. C'est vraiment clair que ce budget, c'est écrit pour les mêmes personnes comme toujours, avec les idées plus ou moins la même. C'est pour les super riches et les milliardaires qui encore ratent des impôts sur leurs richesses qui sont la même de les comme 60 à peu près familles milliardaires, la même richesse que les 6,3 millions Canadiens la plus pauvres autour du pays. Le budget, c'est pour les gens comme les gens qui créent le logement, mais pas le logement abordable. C'est le logement encore avec les prêts de nous pour créer les logements que monsieur, madame, tout le monde ne peut pas vivre là. Alors encore, comme Vert, nous travaillons pour tous les Canadiens, pour un Canada vraiment abordable et un Canada durable aussi. Merci.
Oui, nous sommes disponibles pour les questions en anglais ou en français.
If there is a budget or a Spring Update Implementation Act, is it fair to say that your vote would be no against it?
I have to read it because they have put out a table of legislative changes that are expected. And the one that I find alarming is the one that I am pleased to see that there will be a food security strategy, and that's referenced in the Spring Economic Statement. But what's not clear is why they need to amend the Pest Control Products Act to make food more affordable. So as somebody who's worked for a long time on the carcinogenic and health threats of pesticides, I am leery of changes to the Pest Control Products Act to make groceries more affordable. It might be wholesale cutting of what are really health and safety regulations to make food cheaper could be the line that's being reached here. I don't see why else the Pest Control Products Act is being listed as a place for legislative changes in the Budget Implementation Act. Just for a laugh, if you missed it, they're also going to change their Bill C-15 regulatory sandboxes to add another law that they're not allowed to break. While they create regulatory sandboxes, they'll now not be allowed to break the Official Languages Act. Newsflash. I'm not very excited about that one, but I want to read the fine print before I decide if I'm voting for the Budget Implementation Act. Would I vote for this Spring Economic Statement as a blueprint for Canada's future? No.
On the legislative changes, one thing they are proposing in there is the giving police the power to search mail, originally seen in C2, now being put into this. Just what do you make of the government putting the ability to search mail in an economic document?
Very concerning. It did come up, as you probably know, and those are off-the-record sessions. Parliamentarians are allowed to ask questions for more details to really push on things that aren't clear or to get clarifications or answers. That was one of the items that came up in our off-the-record session. Would there be a warrant required? There was no answer to that question. So yes, it concerns us as opposition MPs. And thanks for spotting it.
The budget has more details about carbon capture and storage for enhanced oil recovery. I know that was something that you were deeply concerned about before.
Well, it's why Stephen Guilbeault quit cabinet.
Sure. And
So,
where are you on that?
Well, page 348 is still there if you have a copy of November 4th's budget. They didn't use disappearing ink. Page 348 still says carbon capture and utilization and storage will be available for investment tax credits, but not enhanced oil recovery. In today's Spring Economic Statement, they actually provide a longish explanation of how we go from a commitment that enhanced oil recovery is not covered. In case anyone wants to know, this is at page 64. They explain that in the commitment in the MOU to the Alberta government, enhanced oil recovery will qualify for investment tax credits. That takes effect, we're now clarified to that point, that takes effect today with the tabling of this document. They then provide the misleading statement that it is estimated that the proposal to increase, that by providing a subsidy essentially for enhanced oil recovery, they claim, and if it's in black and white, will increase federal revenues by $395 million over 4 years. To clarify, I really did drill down on this quite a lot in our questioning to finance officials, because there's no way that an increased subsidy to oil and gas doesn't cost Canadian taxpayers money. It doesn't increase revenue. What they mean by using the term increased revenue, so stick with me for a minute because it took me a while to get this out of them, what they mean is they'll be spending relatively less because their previous carbon capture and storage concept, which did not include enhanced oil recovery, included paying for geological storage of carbon. Now that they don't have to store as much carbon because they're going to use that effort to pull up more oil out of the ground, and they're going to burn it. So they don't have to pay as much for storage. That's not increased revenue. So if you happen to see that on page 64, please don't write it as if it's true in your coverage of the spring economic statement. There is no increased revenue to the Government of Canada by increasing subsidies for enhanced oil recovery, violating the November 4th budget commitments, which are still in writing at page 348, to create a new subsidy to increase oil production for the benefit of big oil.
Given what you've said today about your concerns with this document and what you've said about your concerns about the government's moves to reformulate committees, can you just characterize for us how you feel the government is behaving now that it has a majority?
I feel that before they had a majority because astonishing things like passing laws that say we're allowed to break other laws that now exist, invoking the Henry VIII Clause in Bill C-5, astonishing and anti-democratic laws were passed very quickly because the Liberals and minority had the full support of the Conservative Party and things were pushed through. So I feel like I have been involved in multiple hit-and-run accidents involving a bulldozer.
A quick question for Mr. Morris. The Green Party is going to be selecting a new leader soonish. Soonish?
By fall, I'd say.
By fall? Do you intend to run?
Yeah, thanks for the question. The rules haven't been announced by federal council yet, and so I'm going to be watching what those rules end up looking like, and it's something I'm considering.
Something you're considering? Okay.
And it's not a newsflash, I'm not running. The rules haven't been announced, neither has the timeline. So what I just said about by fall is my speculation. I certainly hope that will be the case. We want to make sure that the Green Party of Canada has new leadership in place. I'll be serving that new leader as a member of Parliament on behalf of the voters of Saanich Gulf Islands, and I do intend to run again. I failed to give John Kidder's full introduction. He's also the nominated candidate for Kamloops Thompson Caribou. We are filling out a slate, and we're going to be ready whenever an election happens. Thank you.
Is this book, is it more or less worthy of getting stomped on than the budget?
Well, I got a lot of commitments out of the Prime Minister on November 17th before I voted for the budget, and it was 10 days later. So the things that I fought for, one of them was the nature strategy. So the $2.8 billion for the nature strategy was announced post-budget and when I voted for it. And what I'd also like to say is now we have the funding for the nature strategy, and I'm very pleased that the Spring Economic Statement includes enhanced funding for the endangered whales of both the East and West Coast. So I won't stomp on this, but I sure wouldn't vote for it.
Maybe I'll just offer a brief follow-up. David, to your question, as you know, I believe strongly that the Greens can be a vehicle to lift up the concerns of Canadians across the country at a time when a lot of folks are hurting. And I'm giving it consideration in terms of running, as you asked previously, in terms of this being an opportunity to lift up those concerns and do so in a way, as you've seen from folks like Elizabeth and others across the country, that we can do it without tearing each other down, doing it in a cooperative way, but also taking on some of the interests I mentioned that continue. In my time here as an MP and in this spring update today, we see some of the same players holding power over folks in my community that deserve a lot better. And I've seen Greens able to be a force for good, to lift up the voices of regular people, and I'm considering to the extent that I could continue to do that if rules are announced, and that's for the Federal Council to decide. Thank you all again.
Thank you.